The construction project that would eventually become known as Minute Maid Park was a major event that finally encamped the Houston Astros in their community of Houston, Texas. The construction of Minute Maid Park would be a blend of brand new technology integrated with the charm of an old-time ballpark. It would be a domed facility with a massive chilled water system that would keep Houston baseball fans cool during those scorching Houston summers. Furthermore, insulation engineering would face further challenges in the fact that grass needed to be irrigated several times a day. And the huge dome would open, allowing a massive influx of hot, humid air that would need to be conditioned. Within a few short years, something went wrong with Minute Maid Park that would forever change the way chilled water systems would be insulated. Hello, my name is Alan Mark, and our special guest today is Mr. Ben Westcott, noted litigation industrial construction attorney from the Andrews Myers construction law firm here in Houston, Texas. Ben, welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me.
Ben, would you tell us a little bit about your wide experience in the construction world?
Sure. I've been a construction lawyer all my career, and really it came naturally to me because my family's in the business. I worked in it in high school and college to help work my way through school. When I got to law school, I found out there was such a thing as construction law, and I just knew it was right for me. I've had the opportunity throughout my career to work with general contractors, subcontractors, suppliers in the industrial construction arena, and oftentimes that involves things like chilled water insulation.
Ben, how was it that you became involved in the insulation world?
Well, as you may know, Houston is the most insulated city in America because we have to have air conditioning all the time. We never get a break from this heat and humidity.
Ben, talk about the case of Minute Maid Park and the massive litigation that went on there.
Sure. Minute Maid Park is the stadium where the Houston Astros play in downtown Houston. It was a retractable roof facility, the first of its kind in this environment. What I mean by this environment is the heat and humidity that would be experienced within the stadium. The Astros wanted the fans to be comfortable, so they wanted the stadium air conditioned, but they also wanted the fans to be able to experience real baseball. And to me, real baseball is outside. And so when they opened that roof, all the Houston heat and humidity would dump down into the stadium. And the stadium management was trying to keep it cool. So you had those two competing forces. You had the outside hot air and the inside cool air conditioning competing for that space. The system was designed to keep the stadium at about 72 degrees, which if you can imagine and you're at home, open your front door, turn on the thermostat to 72 degrees and see how long it stays there. You're fighting an uphill battle. And so what we experienced at Minute Maid Park was the installation began to fail. It began to fail because of the humidity that was generated inside the stadium. The humidity was seen on the outside of the insulation systems. There were drops, there was mold and mildew. This insulation is exposed. The fans who walk around the concourse of the stadium could see it. You'd have water dropping on the floor. You'd have mold within their view. Certainly not enhancing the fan experience.
So basically, it was this new technology that really exacerbated the problem with insulation, with the wrong choice of insulation.
Yeah, it really was. In hindsight, it was the wrong choice. This was, again, a state-of-the-art facility in the sense that we hadn't built a retractable roof facility in this type of environment. But it became clear very quickly that the system would not work as designed. Because what we have here is a permeable insulation. We have an insulation that cannot resist the moisture. And once the moisture gets into the insulation, it holds it. So once it gets wet, it stays wet. And we all know that a wet winter coat won't keep you warm. Okay?
Exactly. Ben, how many stadium litigation cases have you been involved in?
Yes. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on where you sit, we had the same problems at Toyota Center where the Rockets play here in Houston. We also had the same problem at the Reliance Stadium where the Texans play. These are large facilities which require great amounts of air conditioning, and so their chilled water systems are vast. You have lots of situations for outdoor air to get into the spaces where these insulation systems are. You have cargo doors, you have unconditioned spaces, you have long periods of time where the facilities are basically turned off. Like with the Astros, there's half the year where the facility is not even being used, right? But then there are offices and people who have management jobs for the club that want to be comfortable, so you have to run the air conditioning. It's a difficult situation for a permeable insulation system to perform under.
Ben, when it comes to litigation in these stadiums, is it major litigation?
Yeah, these are big lawsuits. The counties and cities and the taxpayers are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into these facilities. And when you have a failure of this nature, we're talking about tens of 20 of millions of dollars to fix them. And so we're talking about large-scale litigation with high stakes and high costs. And so we're really looking at a situation where better decisions need to be made on the front end so that we're not fighting these fights on the back end.
Who are the people that are most liable in this case? The engineers, the project managers for choosing the wrong insulation or installing the wrong insulation improperly?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. I mean, that's what I'm asked to do all the time. Unfortunately, when the wrong decision is made on the front end, usually the architects and engineers and the contractors get blamed because the system as designed won't work, and then the contractor is held to the standard of making it work, and so they all share in the blame because at the end of the day, it can't be installed in a way that will perform long term, and then you have the fight with the design team and the owner about how much money to spend on the facility. You're constantly trying to cut costs and not spending the money that's needed to put the right system in the right environment, then we all lose.
Ben, what type of insulation was specified in the Minute Maid Park project?
It was fiberglass insulation with an all-service jacket. And to the layman, what that means is we have a permeable insulation and a permeable jacket that really cannot resist high temperature and high humidity environments. The other problem we have there is that once the insulation gets wet from the heat and humidity, it won't dry out, and so it stays wet. And we all know that the insulation needs to be dry in order to perform its function. We also know that the insulation has to keep its density in order to perform its function. And so once we have water introduced into that insulation, we're really losing a lot on the performance side of things. It also really impacts the maintenance of the systems. It requires a lot more care for that system to perform as designed. Let's think about a hypothetical situation where you have this fiberglass insulation in a service area. You have forklifts, you have big trucks, you have things that you have to move in and out of these stadiums. If you bump into that insulation and you pierce that all-service jacket, guess what happens? All that heat and humidity go right to that hole, suck into that hole, and get that insulation wet. And then you have a failure.
In your opinion, Ben, if an engineer specifies a permeable insulation where the dew point exceeds 40 degrees and the insulation keeps failing, could that engineer be liable?
Yes, I think so. You always have to consider the legal standard for these issues. The legal standard is what is the practice in the area at the time, taking in consideration the facts and the circumstances of the specific design being performed. So in this case, we're talking about a situation where we have a retractable roof with a high temperature, high humidity environment. How is that system going to perform under these conditions? I think the answer to that question in hindsight is those systems won't perform, and a better system is what's required.
Ben, as a legal professional looking at the insulation business from the outside looking in, what advice could you pass along to the manufacturers or contractors in the field?
To work together as a team, put the design team, the general contractor, the mechanical subcontractor, the insulator, and the manufacturer together and come up with a plan, looking at all of the conditions that this system is going to operate under so that you can make the best decision. Certainly don't take the cheapest route. Certainly don't take that set of specs that you've used on 10 prior projects and just assume that it's going to work on the project that you're building now. Make the right decision based upon good information so that you get a long-term, well-performing system.
Basically, this new technology in all of these parks opened the door to an insulation failure that we probably wouldn't have noticed before.
Yeah, like a lot of things in history, you learn from your mistakes. And one of the things we've learned in this environment is that permeable insulations don't really do very well in this industrial type environment with the high heat and high humidity.
Ben, I want to thank you very much for joining us and sharing your expertise in the world of insulation litigation. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me.
Till next time, from the offices of Andrews Myers Construction Law in Houston, Texas, Alan Mark, goodbye, everybody.
Wham!
Litigation arising from improper insulation choice or improper insulation installation is something that everyone wants to avoid. Thanks for watching.